Shall we begin?
Why would a good God allow suffering to exist? Does God really exist?
Let's begin now.
Why did God command the deaths of so many people in the Bible? Why does God remain so hidden?
Let's begin.
I just think it kind of trivializes childbirth. I don't know. I think having gone through that, I don't know. It doesn't make me want to buy chips.
Okay, because there was a pro-choice group that came out and said that they were humanizing a fetus.
Oh.
Right?
Well, I think the size of that baby also was like past when somebody might have an abortion.
Okay.
So I think at that stage when the baby is that big, then it I don't know. Yeah.
Everybody loves the Super Bowl. At Super Bowl 50, it was estimated that 111.9 million people watched. And that's not considering those that were live streaming or watching it by groups. But not only do we love the game, but we love the halftime show and the commercials. This year, one commercial had a controversy. The National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Law was furious that the Doritos commercial humanized a fetus. Sounds weird, doesn't it? I want to tackle this issue. Once again, I have invited Dr. Tony Costa, a New Testament scholar and apologist, to deal with this issue. Dr. Costa, we know that the abortion issue is very sensitive, and there's a lot of discussion about it. Now, how do abortionists support their claim that an embryo is not human? And do you think that it's strategic for them to use the term fetus and embryo and not baby?
Well, the terms embryo and fetus, of course, are scientifically valid terms. They're used all the time in obstetrics and gynecology and so forth. But the tendency to use those terms exclusively is clearly a contrived idea because it wants to argue that the embryo, the fetus, is not really human. When a woman is pregnant, she doesn't say, I'm going to have a fetus. Yeah. She says, I'm going to have a baby. And so there's an understanding that the child that she's carrying is a human being. But when we keep hearing things like embryo and fetus, it's the same terminology that, for instance, biologists and zoologists would use concerning animals, the offspring of animals that are still not born. So I do believe that there is definitely an attempt to dehumanize. The whole commercial that we were talking about during the Super Bowl, the charge that was brought by the pro-choice organization was that there was a tendency to humanize. Yeah. So they fully understand what's going on here. So by using these terms like fetus, embryo, even a zygote, which is the fertilized egg, they do try to dehumanize what we're talking about here. And that is the reality that there is clearly an unborn human being here, an unborn baby here. So I think you're absolutely right. There is definitely an attempt to skirt the issue.
So what about the idea? How do they support their claim?
Well, the idea is some of them will take the legal definition. So in Canada, for instance, the legal definition of a person is that a child that is born ex utero, outside of the uterus, outside the womb, postnatally, that is a person. So under the Canadian Constitution, or even the criminal code, a human being, a child becomes a human being when they exit the birth canal and take their first breath. Okay. And so that is what defines a person. So it has to be outside of the womb and the child has to breathe. So if the child is stillborn, it's not really considered a person, but here's the contradiction. In Canada, if a woman experiences a stillbirth where a child is 8 months, 9 months and exits the womb dead, by law you have to have a funeral for that child. Yes. Which is very strange because under the law you're only a person when you're born and you breathe. But a stillbirth, there's no breathing obviously. But there seems to be a contradiction here because you still grant the humanity of that child by granting a funeral for that child.
Yes. And even using the term dead assumes that it's alive.
Exactly. So I think an important point that has to be made here is that dead things don't grow.
Yes.
And so whatever's in the womb of that mother is alive, is growing. This is not just some dead blob of protoplasm. This is something that is alive. This is an organism that is developing, gestating, and is really, it is a little human being.
So it's more of an ideology than to say that it's not a person versus not scientific.
That's correct. It's more of a philosophical, theological question. Not so much scientific, because the scientific medical evidence says that human life begins at conception. And so at conception, the DNA is intact. Everything about that child, the blueprint of that child, is already there. There's 46 chromosomes, 23 from the father, 23 from the mother. And so all of that information, your software, if you will, is already built into you at the point of conception.
Thank you, Dr. Costa.
My pleasure.